You talk a lot about deterrence of China. I would submit that Xi Jinping is watching what we do very carefully. If we abandon Ukraine, that would be the strongest signal possible to Xi Jinping that he can take Taiwan without significant resistance from this country.
Thank you, Senator King. Senator Scott of Florida.
Okay, and then what? Let's imagine that happens. Taiwan becomes part of China, similar to Hong Kong or Macau, and then what? What happens for an American? What happens to our lives? Nothing? But what's the next step where it affects me? Like, go ahead. I mean, right now, I'm being smoked by wildfires that are out of control and with an underfunded firefighting service. That's causing me to get respiratory issues or cancer or whatever the fuck. Literally hundreds of billions of dollars of real estate and structures are being burned down. Millions of lives are being disrupted. Now, I can see the direct effect of climate change right out of my fucking window. Where is this big Taiwan? Go ahead. Tell me what happens next. Okay, Taiwan joins China. Then what? Then what? What's the big fear? What's the thing that's going to happen next that eventually actually affects an American? How many steps down the line before the first American is affected? Doesn't sound like there's one, man.
So I have a lot of respect for him and for everybody that puts on the uniform and serves in battle and has to lead people in battle, because it been on a ship that didn't happen to me, but I had a lot of friends that happened to
control the most important trade routes.
I've served on this committee for 6 years.
Guys, liberal defense policies explained.
The procedure was to get everyone in the one room.
Good thinking.
Okay, you're all right. I'll come straight to the point. This white paper is recommending we spend close to $400 billion over the forward estimates. Now, at some point, the PM is going to be asked a very simple question. In order to protect us from which enemy?
It's so hard to say.
400 billion, pick one.
A regional player.
Specifically, Colonel.
An Indo-Pacific regional player.
More specifically?
Indo-Asia-Pacific.
That's broader. Who are you leaving out?
Europe?
Yeah, I sort of need a country.
Or an unaligned player.
No, a country.
One that might threaten us, just one.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to raise tensions.
Where?
In this room.
You know what? I'll name one and you just nod. China. Yeah? Okay. And what exactly are we protecting?
Strategic interests.
Specifically, Colonel?
Indo-Pacific strategic
Again,
interests.
Brigadier, really specifically.
Indo-Asia-Pacific strategic
You know what?
interests.
I'll say it and then you nod. Our trade routes. Yeah? And who is our number one trading partner?
Shall we use the nod system?
Sure. China? So under this scenario, we're spending close to $30 billion a year to protect our trade with China from China. And that doesn't strike anyone at this table as odd?
That's what a chatter literally just said to me. He was like, you know, if China controls the most important trade routes, it's like the most important trade routes to China?
That mattered. But suddenly we re-inject DEI and critical race theory, dividing truth.
Oh, yeah. And if you want more, by the way, the critical race theory stuff, you know, we're pausing because we're going to come back to that. This is it in a nutshell. Former Prime Minister of Australia.
Underlying all this stuff about the need of nuclear power is the idea that China has either threatened us or will threaten us. Now, this is a distortion and it's untrue. China does not threaten the United States. Nobody can threaten the United States. It's got 10,000 kilometres of sea between the Chinese coast and California. It's got the Atlantic Ocean on the other side. It has a massive country with in space, in land mass and friends in Canada on the north and Mexico on the south, and the greatest armaments in all history. China has committed, in the eyes of the United States, the great sin of internationalism. And what is that sin? To develop an economy as big as the United States. That's the sin. They've got as big as the US. The Americans will never condone or accept a state as large as them, you know, and that's what China presents. China's mere presence. I mean, they would have preferred they remain in poverty, 20% of humanity forever. But the fact that China is now, you know, an industrial economy larger than the United States, larger, according to IMF, 20% larger, they say, hang on, this is not in the playbook. This is not in the playbook. You know, what an affront. This is about the maintenance of US strategic hegemony in Asia. Now, this is a country which has no land in the metropolitan zone of Asia. There's no US in Asia. It's 10,000 kilometres across the Pacific to the coast of California. So they are not a metropolitan Asian power, but they claim to be and wish to be the primary strategic power in Asia. You know? So what are the Chinese supposed to say to that? Oh, that's okay. We've been here 4,000 years. We've developed, you know, we've been subjugated by every bugger known to man. We've developed a decent economy, a decent standard of living, you know, shelter, accommodation, education, you know. That's our sin, is it? That's our sin. And we've got to be superintended by your Navy, you know, by the US Navy. Could you just imagine if the Chinese Blue Water Navy decided to do their sightseeing 6 miles off the coast of California? Could you imagine the brouhaha that would go on?